I am. Okay. Another video. All right. I think I'm going to call this one Small Souls, Big Spirits, or something like that. I'm using a different phone, so we'll see what happens with this one because maybe I won't have so much of a time limit because this is something that I feel like, if I present this properly, could be quite helpful to quite a few people who may be a little confused about certain things. Okay. All right, so where to begin? I guess first I'll start by defining what the difference is between a soul and a spirit. A soul, what makes a soul special is simply that it can generate its own energy. It's complete and whole by itself. It doesn't need anything else to validate its existence. It doesn't need anything else to do business with. It doesn't need anything. It's just good by itself. And when it's balanced, when both of the poles are balanced, like it's like the sun, it's creating its own energy. It doesn't just, it's, I'll just say, when it's balanced, it doesn't have a bias one way or the other, so it's not constantly veering off and going to different directions. It's just it's good right where it's at because it has everything that it needs. It doesn't need to someone come up and it's like someone can come and try to do business with it, but it's not doing business with you because you're manipulating it because it somehow needs you. If anything, it's doing business with you for you. Or if it's doing a business with another soul, then it's, which is what you could say is like best case scenario, then it's a mutually beneficial thing. Um, but I would say generally, there would be an elder. It's like there would be, a master and a student based on how large the soul is, because you can break the soul down to something that's extremely simple, just positive and negative, just up and down, just masculine, feminine. And in a sense, in that state, it's really its most potent because it its potential is so high because it doesn't have so many things that are defined already. Because definitions are like boxes and limitations. So it's something you need it in a sense because it puts things in order so that you can view it and that you can make some type of sense of it and learn about it. But it's not something that, yeah. So that's a soul. And then a spirit is something that is, okay. Let's say you're a soul. All right, let's not say that. The soul is like the king. Let's say the soul is like the royalty. And the reason why they're the king is because they have all the energy. They have all the gold. They have all whatever. So people have to come to them to do business with them. It's like for whatever reason, the king has the knowledge of how to get the gold, how to get the knowledge, how to get whatever. If you could do it yourself, you'd be your own king, and people would be coming to you, because the king. It's difficult to say that because a lot of people's definition of what a king queen is always doing war or having war with things and all like that. And there's a time and a place for that. But a balanced king is not going to go to war with someone else simply because they figured out how to generate their own energy. There's not really, it's like at that point it's like it becomes like a family. It's like I'm going to look out for you. I know we're all in this together type thing. Whereas the spirit, it's something polarized or separate. I want to paint this in such a way that it makes sense to the most amount of people. Um, okay, let's just say that you have a kingdom And we'll get into that in a second. In the kingdom, you have the king and the queen, and they go back to, it's like, just like any type of generator, or just like any type of um, battery or anything, there's always a positive pole and a negative pole. So there's the masculine and the feminine, and they go back together. It's like sometimes they need something from each other, because without them, then they don't really exist separately, because there has to be a flow. It's like if you want there to be some type of electrical current, there has to be a power cord and a grounding cord. So there has to be like the potential and then the purpose. So you can have all the potential in the world, but if you don't have a reason to do anything with it, then you're just going to sit with all the potential, because like, for what? I'm going to go build it. It just seems arbitrary. There's no reason to do it. But it's like, if you have all the power, but then you see something that for whatever reason you consider to be highly beautiful or highly whatever, that's like the masculine looking at the female and becoming like seduced, or it's like there's something romantic about it, because there's something about it that I don't really know. It's like it's an attraction. It wants. I feel like if I was to go and interact with this other pole, something different would happen. There'd be a creation, and you can see this. The masculine pole gets together with the feminine pole. They come together and they create something like a child. And then the child, the creation, is loved by both poles. And the creation needs both poles to sustain itself and get to a point where it can become its own separate soul, like its own, but it's never separate. That's the thing. It's always a paradox. Okay. So you have the king and the queen. I'm just gonna assume that you get what I'm saying when I'm talking about you need the king and the queen to create energy. You need the positive and negative poles to create a current like this that goes back and forth. Because if it's just like this, there's nothing happening. It's not moving. It's like you need the electricity and you need the magnetism. It's like the magnetism is something that's pulling the electricity away from where it's at. Like, here's all the potential, but if there's no other force that's operating on the potential, it's not going to do anything. It's just going to sit there. But if you put like a magnet or something over here that has a separate charge or an opposite charge, and it gets close enough, it'll start to pull energy away from the potential. And this is what happens with spirits and all like this, but we'll get into that in a second. But it's not always a bad thing. Everything is good and bad to it. But let's just say that's your queen. Let's just say that's your perfected feminine principle. If you perfect your masculine principle, you'll have the reflection of a perfected feminine principle. And when you guys get together, but it's not you guys, because technically the soul has both poles. And this is the thing that, people, might get a little confused about or something like that. But you can be in a human body. This is a layer of your existence. It's like an onion, or like a tree who every single time that it goes around a year, it comes out with a new layer to it. And as it goes out, it's like you could say this side and this side, but in the inside, both the sides are together. If that makes sense. So it's like the longer you kind of like spiral out, the more you might forget that you're both sides. It's like if you start in the middle, you're already both sides. But as soon as you start to spiral out from yourself, it's like, and through time, because when you're right here, there's no time, because you're not moving. You're just right here, boom. Everything is right here. But to give this feeling like you exist, or this feeling of purpose, or this feeling of meaning, then there's this other force that comes and starts to kind of like, I don't want to use the word seduce, but something compels you. But it's really just energy. It's just electricity and magnetism is pulling it. It's just, you see with the orbits and everything. It's okay. So goes like this, and it's coming like this, and throughout time. So let's say that it takes 100,000 years for once you get really far away from yourself. Let's say it takes you 100,000 years to get right here. So you were over here and you were looking at, let's say, you were looking at the dark side. It's like a day. Like, let's say instead of the day being 24 hours, the day was 200,000 years, and your lifespan is 50 years. So how many lifetimes do you live on the nighttime side? You see, like, how many lifetimes do you live on the nighttime side? So you might, if you don't have a connection to yourself, which is the whole thing, the one thing, the soul as in solo as in the oneness, then you may forget that you're the other side also. And because the other side seems opposed to you, you may think it's your enemy. And so you're at war with yourself. And, that's where you get like the word universe is uni, which is one, and then verse is conflict. So one in conflict. So there you see what kind of happens with that. Uni, conflict. One in conflict. But how can the one be in conflict with itself unless it believes it's only one part of itself? It has to split itself into at least two pieces to be able to believe that it's looking, and then it has to forget that it's looking at itself. It has to forget that everything it sees is a mere image of itself. So if what you're looking at is something that you don't like, it's because you don't like yourself. And you're being shown a piece of yourself that maybe needs some work, because everything is already balanced. But if you're not seeing it as balanced, it's because your perspective's off. You're somehow out of balance. It's like the earth is like going like this, and they say that's what causes the season and all like that. But what if the earth was just like this? It'd be in balance. It'd be able to create upon itself. But this is all just a manifestation of what's going on the inside. Okay. Let me try to stay on point here. But you get what I'm saying when I say that if you forget between lifetimes, it's like if the galaxy spins, what is it, like 26,000 years, if it spins like this, but your lifespan is only 70 years, how many lifetimes do you live in complete darkness? So if you only can see darkness, you start to believe you're darkness, or you start to believe you're righteous and the other one must be wrong. But right when you get over here, you see things from a completely different point of view. And now the other side, if you don't remember that, you see? So you are a spirit until you become a soul. You're already a soul, but you're identified as the spirit. It's like, just like a tree, it's like the trunk, you could say, is the soul, and then the roots are like all the spirits, because it's separating. It's like it's taking the oneness and it's branching it out like this. So it's all the spirits, and then there you go. And that also, you can see it's like the magnetic field. It goes up like this, and then it comes down and then goes back into itself again. And you got, so there must be a force that's pulling it up and a force that's pulling it down, because the branches are going up and is going down. So what's in the middle of that is the source, is the creation point. And once you find that, once that's yourself, is right in the middle, before you start getting pulled into the light or get pulled into the darkness. Because as the tree, when you're up, then you think that it's daytime. Like, oh, daytime is, oh, so good, we like the daytime, blah, blah, blah. So then what's under the ground is like the underworld, and that's hell, and everybody, blah, 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 and all the worms and all the maggots live there, and da-da-da-da. You start creating all these stories in your head about how one's better than the other. But you got crazy motherfuckers up here who are going around killing each other and doing a whole bunch of crazy shit that you would say is kind of like hellish. And then you got, you got things in the ground that don't do nothing to nobody. And that's where like all the minerals and like there's a lot of good things there too. So it's always a balance. So one of the main, I guess, points or ideas that I'm trying to express is that if you somehow get yourself to a point where you believe that you're right and someone else is wrong, you're not coming from a soul's point of view. Because from a soul's point of view, there's no right or wrong. There is simply a time and a place for everything. And from the center point, you can look out and see if it's a time and a place for that. Because the soul is about balance. So if it looks out onto itself and it sees not something that's right or wrong, not a definition of whenever you tell a lie, it's wrong. There's not a definition like that. There's a time and a place for a lie, you could say. Where maybe a lie, does more, it doesn't matter. You look out upon yourself and you say, okay, well, if I was in this position, from my point of view, if someone were to lie to me, it would actually, maybe I can see what the progression will be. It's like if it's like if something bad happens to you, like a lot of times when something bad happens to them, like they have like some type of crisis or something happens where someone like they almost die or whatever, something that a lot of people would consider to be bad. If you look at the chain of events that happens after that, they start to expand because of that so-called bad event. So it's like in the moment you think, oh, this is bad. But then when you get a little bit further in time and you can look back on the timeline and be like, oh, wait, if that wouldn't have happened, I'd probably be still doing the same bullshit that I was doing before. So then that became good. So it's only because of your perspective in the moment that says that it's bad. So if you think anything is good or bad, everything is simply balanced. So if you look at something and you say that, oh, it's bad, it's because you have no perspective. It's because you're not coming from yourself, because the self knows better than good or bad, right or wrong. It can play with those ideas on the outermost layers of itself. But on the, it's like you're already on the outskirts of your own kingdom. You've been like banished from your own kingdom. It's like if the center of the kingdom is where the royalty is, and then there's layers like this, you're already all the way the fuck out here if you think that, because you're polarized. There's like one pole over here, one pole over here. So the one in the middle is like, I everything came from me. I see the purpose of everything that was created. Okay. So now it's just about learning about myself so I can continue to expand. But if you're over here and you think that you're over here and you're this angel of righteousness, now you have this other, because you say you're righteous would mean nothing if now you don't create the other pole that says, well, they're not righteous. And this is okay. This is the duality, and it's to play with them is okay. It is like a game. But if you don't know it's a game because you're not in the middle with the controller, then you'll start to think lots of crazy things. And this kind of leads me into my next point, which is this is the place where once you become polarized, this is hell. It doesn't really matter if you think you're righteous or if you think you're not righteous. As soon as you pick one or the other, you're automatically in hell. You're automatically in division, which is the devil divides. So you're automatically with the devil, which is not a bad thing. That's another part of yourself. So it's okay, really. It's you. It's still learning from you. If you know this is when you have the most potential because you're coming from the place of potential. But if you think that this is somehow objectively true, that this person 2,000 years ago came and told everybody this, and because they wrote it in the book like this or whatever, that this must be true because so many other people are believing it, that's true for you. But that doesn't mean it's true for anybody else. That doesn't mean that it's true for that doesn't mean that it's true for, it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean it's true for anybody else but you. I don't want to make it too complicated. Okay, so, all right. It's kind of like a visualization to kind of see this a little bit better. Now, a spirit can get very large. It's like if someone believes in a God, let's just say someone believes in, some archangel, let's just say, because everybody gonna be talking about Archangel Michael and all like this, talking about their channeling him and all like this. Maybe they are. I don't know. If it doesn't. It's irrelevant. What is relevant is that you realize how it was created. As a creator, you realize how other things are created. It's like you can reverse engineer everything. So that's why you can look at, this is like using the first eye. Like you can look at something and see where it came from. And because you can see where it came from and the direction it's moving, you can see where it's going to end up. So if someone comes to you and they're kind of complaining about the direction that they think they're heading, because it's like a train, it's like it'll gain momentum. And if people are gaining momentum in a certain direction, they might not know how to, because they're not in control of their own ship. They're just kind of looking out the window like, oh man, I don't know who's at the conductor's seat, but this is getting pretty shitty. But then you got some dude over here like, oh, it's okay because all the shittiness has to come, and then you're only righteous if you go through the shittiness or whatever. It's like, okay, that could be true. There's no one that's saying that's wrong except for you. But if you're believing it simply out of fear, then you're never going to be in control of yourself. Because the soul doesn't have fear. The soul uses fear. That's why fear exists. But the soul can't possibly be afraid. Afraid of what? And this is the thing. At the most grand level, I guess you could say, in the oneness that, let's say, encompasses all of the universes or all of the multiverses, all of whatever. You can't really do it because it's infinite. But let's just say that you could. That'd be oneness. That'd be the soul. That would be the soul, the supreme creator. That's in everything. That's in you. That is you. There's no separation. That's a paradox you can't really necessarily explain. but that would be the soul. But since you can't really take that concept and use it to necessarily build anything, because at that point everything's already built, which is that's part of the game. That's how you can see where you're at, and it doesn't matter. But let's just say that the soul is like a seed, okay? The soul is like a seed. Now, and because the seed is a copy, I guess you could say, of what created it, the creator. So that's why if you're a son of the creator or a daughter of the creator, you could say you're a seed of the creator, but you are independently your own, because you could take a seed off of this planet, and if there was another planet somewhere else that had similar conditions where that seed could thrive, you could plant that one seed. And most plants have the ability to self-pollinate, repair their own DNA, reconstruct their own DNA, adapt just by themselves. There's some intelligence that does this. So they don't necessarily need this. Doesn't matter. Like I said, I want to try to keep this focused. Okay. So it doesn't necessarily need something else to come pollinate it. So therefore, the plant in itself is like a soul, because it can replicate itself. It doesn't need anything else to replicate. You could make the argument that, it needs the minerals in the ground and all like that, and blah, blah, blah. But that's not really what we're, trying to, yeah, okay. So, and when I'm saying that I don't want to make this too complicated. I'm not necessarily saying that fuck everything. I'm not really saying that. I'm just saying that you got to be capable of saying fuck everything, or else they might use that shit against you. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's like, imagine, okay, where do I want to go with this? Imagine you're a kingdom, right? And you got like these walls, right? You got these walls, and you got you could say the walls are like your body, right? Your walls, you built these walls so that you can, have a structure in this world, okay? But since you exist on all dimensions simultaneously, this is just one expression of yourself, and you construct this temple on this dimension so that you can express yourself within these frequencies. Okay, but let's say that something in this frequency is just like, I don't really like them. They're not really playing by the rules, or I don't know, whatever the fuck, blah, blah, blah. And this other force decides to come attack that kingdom. Now, another soul, it's like, I don't want to necessarily get into this, but another soul is not going to really do that. A soul doesn't really go out and pick fights with people just because it's jealous, or it has hate, or it's whatever, or because it wants something that another one has. That's like the reptilian state of consciousness, like the lower, you could say, state of consciousness. Like, man, he's just so rich, man. I don't know what just happened there. I'm not really sure, but I guess let's hope it doesn't happen again. Hopefully I can put the videos together so I don't got to make them separate. We'll see. This isn't my phone, so I don't know. But if not, I guess it'll be part 2. But what was I saying? Something about... Okay, so you manifest yourself in this temple as a soul, and the other souls aren't... All right, okay. So you get like the basic, spiritual precepts, like, the 7 deadly sins and all like this, because those are like the things that the souls don't really deal with, because they don't have nothing to prove to anyone, first of all. There's no feeling of better or less than anybody else. So they're not... Most of the reasons why people go to war is to take something that somebody else has, because in some way they're jealous, or somehow the other one makes them feel inferior. They're in some state of fear that there's some feeling of lack, like this is my territory or whatever. Like you think crazy things. So you go off and you do these things. But the soul wouldn't really necessarily do it. But this is not what I'm trying to say. I'm just trying to keep it, like I said, simple. So let's just say that as a soul in a kingdom, you were looking, everything was all good, and everything was just what's up. Everybody in your kingdom was happy and all like this. And somebody else looking at you like, man, their kingdom is so good. My people are fucking just mad at me all the time, and it's all my fault because I fucking starve them and take all their money and tax them to death and everything like that. But fuck that. I'm gonna raise me an army. I'm gonna go and take their shit so I can have some more. Okay. So let's just say, just for the sake of, explaining the power of the soul, that kingdom comes, and the other kingdom, not necessarily a solar kingdom, but a polarized entity that's amassed a lot of currency, or amassed a lot of wealth or energy, so much so that their kingdom is you know, 3 times as big as the kingdom that of the soul, right? So it feels like it can go attack the soul. Okay. So the soul, because, you know, it's trying to express itself among polarized beings, may create polarized things. But it creates it in such a way that it's like a path that will lead people out of the polarization back to themselves. Because really that's the purpose of the soul. The purpose of the soul is to be itself. So if its purpose is to be itself, it realizes that by guiding others to themselves, that is an extension of being itself, if that makes sense. So that's really the purpose of the soul. So it may create things like, you know, that may not seem soul-like, but it also has the balance. So within the kingdom, it could have all these different things, but that doesn't make it the soul. It doesn't identify with the things necessarily that it creates. It takes responsibility for them and sees that the purpose, but knows it's a time for creation, it's a time for destruction. So within the grand cosmic, you know, dance, if another kingdom was able to come and attack that kingdom, the kingdom, let's just say, because it was had so much energy in this dimension, because building up so much energy here doesn't necessarily mean you have a lot of energy up here. You might put a whole bunch of energy in the third dimension, but since it's so heavy and dense, you can't actually take any of that energy with you up here, because you don't want to do the work. If you've taken all of your energy to take from everybody else, it makes you heavy. So you can't actually leave this dimension. Whereas the soul put in the work and generated its own energy and attracted other beings to them to share, not to take, but to share. It has no need to take anything because it has its own supply of energy, unlimited. Like a sun, solar, like that's what it is. So the other kingdom comes, let's say it knocks down the walls, let's say it does everything, let's say it gets all the way down to the core, let's say it goes in, it does some crazy shit, it slaughters all the people, whatever. So the people are like the cells in your body, like all like this, and this is how you get rid of fear. Your body's like the kingdom, like the temple that you built within this dimension to be able to express yourself among the people. Okay, so, but that doesn't mean that you hear this before, you're not your body, okay. So simple concept. So let's say that someone wants to come and destroy your physical body. If that opportunity presents itself anyways, then you might have made a wrong turn at Albuquerque, if that's even happening. But let's assume that you did. The soul is unlimited, so it can turn anything around. But maybe at the same time, maybe it's time for you to give up your physical body. You can't, you wouldn't want to remain attached if in the grand scheme that wasn't the balance. Sometimes you got to let go. Sometimes you got to let things be destroyed so something else can be created. Let's just say, again, this is for the sake of, you know, explaining certain things. The kingdom comes and it destroys everything around the kingdom. But what was actually keeping the kingdom alive was that original seed in the middle, was that original seed. Everything grew from the original seed. And that seed has, you can see even in the physical world, the seed has a strong protective layer. It's like, you can make the argument again that some birds can chew through it, and if you use your teeth you can, but a lot of seeds, like you take like a watermelon seed and if you just try to like take your 2 fingers, like I was doing this the other day, I was like, this thing is, I could take my teeth or whatever, but like if I'm just trying to like put in it, like just crack it, it's not gonna, if anything, it's like, it's a little flexible, it's not gonna crack, it's not gonna do it, like it's just gonna kind of, you know. So okay, I don't know. It's like, okay. So the seed, you could, all right, and so many ways to go with this. In the Art of War, it says something along the lines of, you can be invincible, but you can't manufacture somebody else's vulnerability. So what it's saying is that if in a perfect world, every kingdom is invincible. If every kingdom is invincible, then here's where you get into the universal law of agreements and contracts. You don't need to contract with a being that is vulnerable. You can just go take their shit. So you don't need to be like, I want this for $5. Nope, I need 15. Fuck you, I'm taking it. Okay, but that's not how the universe works, because the souls are indestructible. It's like you can take something from them, but what? It's like instantly manifested another one. It's not a problem, you know. I see that you took from me based on your lack of wisdom, so I hope that what I gave you somehow serves you into finding yourself. So take all the gold in the kingdom. I really don't care. I'll just make new. Not a problem. But then what the person finds out that it took all the gold is actually makes them heavy, and it makes them, but it may lead them down a path of spiraling down, but sometimes you got to hit that bottom before you start to build yourself back up. So it's like a pendulum. It's like in the middle, in stillness, is where the soul is. But sometimes you're moving, so like boom. Sometimes you got to hit that wall, like boom. Like I can't get any more evil. It's like I can't. It's like just whatever. It's just I can't get. It's like you hit a wall. You hit a limitation, because only the soul in the middle is unlimited. Because the faster you spin, it's like a top. It's like you spin the top. If it starts to wobble, and as soon as the top stops to wobble, it's because it's spinning slower. So the top that's spinning the fastest is always like this. But if you look at a top that's on a wobble, it looks like the top is going like this. So at some point it gets like this. And if it goes too far to one side, it falls. And this is where you get the whole story of, the fallen angels and all like this, because they get too polarized. They get too far on one side, so and they fall, and then they got to pick themselves back up. They got to start their whole spin all over again and hope that they don't get too far on one side. Because it's like, I guess you could make the argument that when you're first starting, you may need to go to one side a little bit so you can go around, so you can create this vortex or this current. You're going back and forth to create this current. Okay. And then you write like this. And then it's like you might be spinning just so fast, but you can't see it. That's how fast you're spinning. That's called mastering yourself. You're spinning so fast you don't see it. And that's when you have so much energy that doesn't really matter what comes into your field, you're willing to share. Because you have so much love. That's unconditional love. It doesn't matter if the most evil motherfucker in the world comes into your field. If you see something that you can do for that, you'll do it, because that's compassion, because you see that's you. That's an aspect of your creation. And you know that at some point on some timeline somewhere, that's you. So you do with that most evil motherfucker that you would want done to yourself. And that's the power of the soul. You can't lose anything, because it doesn't have anything to gain, because it has everything, because it is everything. So any of these motherfuckers out here talking about bow down to this God or else, this is what you call a spirit. And these are like the giant, like the big old spirits, like spirits that can encompass a whole planet. There's spirits that can encompass a whole galaxy, but it doesn't make them a soul. There's a spirit that can go around, that can polarize a whole galaxy at once. But it's still an aspect of the soul. It's like, okay, so you got the two, it's like if you got like the Vesica Pisces, I think it's like this, and you got like the one circle over here, the one circle over here, and the one circle in the middle. Okay, but when they come together, then they're one, and okay, whatever. Let's say you had one, let's say that when you were generating your current, so you got the positive and the negative, the masculine and feminine. Let's say every single time you went, it's like you preferred the masculine, let's say. So every single time you went like this, it's like, so this top spinning again. Let's say every time you went over to the masculine side of your spin, you preferred that. So you start, every single time you went like this, you start a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. It'll get to a point where you fall, and then you got to start over again. But before you do that, you might get polarized to the point where your whole field is big enough to fit a whole galaxy in it, because everything is relative. So your field can be like 90% or like 95% darkness. Let's say that's darkness. So you got all evil and everything, and you could just put it on the planet and go, oh, there's all this evil shit on the planet, blah blah blah. But the planets come back into alignment. So that's why you see, I don't want to get into all this, but that's why you see like the people waking up and all like this, because it's trying to set the balance. The soul of the planet, you could say, is trying to set the balance. So these entities, they are real. Okay, I'm not trying to take the realness away from when you talk about Yahweh, or you talk about Jehovah, or you talk about, I don't want to say Krishna, because Krishna, is more of an idea as opposed to like an actual being. But like Christ is you. Like who's these other entities out here that people talk about? I know those are the biggest ones. And any of the beings from any of the mythologies, like Hermes and Zeus and Greek mythology, all the different mythologies around the world, they are all real, because this is what happened. The soul at some point was like, okay, the soul, because it needed inspiration, right? But the inspiration came from within, but it's like it had to expand still. So it's like, as the king, you might be like, okay, as the king, I know I can go out and farm everything. I know I can go out and do everything. I know I can do all this because it's all me. But I can see that I have all this energy. I have all this potential, but there's no real reason for me to, it's like, why am I going out and making food? Why? For what? It's like, I don't even need food. Why would I farm? But I see all these other beings who are still polarized, who need to ingest outside sources of energy. So I will create a farm, but it's like, do I really want to work on it? I might work on it for a little bit. I'll work on it to show the people how to do it, but eventually they may take over the farm and it'll become their farm. So this is when you might like start like, an entity is formed. So it might start out as like a family, right? And then that family starts to nurture a certain spirit. And that spirit, if it was good, it could just be like, oh, it could have the same type of mentality as the soul. You know, like, oh, I had this food and I'm trying to share and like this. But eventually, it might. What if that family, when it was come up in their cycles, because everything is spiraling, it comes in a cycle, it keeps choosing this way instead of that way. What if every single time it has a crossroads, it goes left? And then the next time it goes left, and the next time it goes left. And throughout generation after generation, these people keep building momentum to go left, to go left, to go left, to go left, to the point where now they're charging everybody for the food. They're charging crazy, outrageous amounts, getting to the point where they're concerned about other entities coming to take over their farm, so they start poisoning their food to weaken all the other entities that come and try to eat from their farm. This is when you get polarized, but there's an entity that's formed, there's a spirit, and that spirit is trying to take energy to build itself up. Ideally, you want to, a spirit is a soul. I don't want to say it like, the soul is simply the balanced spirit, the one who's doesn't have a wobble necessarily to positive and negative or masculine and feminine. It's equally both. So okay, that should explain it well enough. Okay, so that family builds whatever the farm, and then starts, and then you can see now you got McDonald's and they got all these crazy things. But originally there was a soul that was here and was like, hey, you can grow your own food. Okay, that's what's up, gangsta. There was at some point there was a knowledge. There was a knowledge of how to do these things. It's like you can make the argument somebody just woke up and like, ooh, I know how to farm. Okay, but that's still them going up into their higher consciousness to bring the information down. So this is like, if you want to externalize the situation, you could say a higher being came down, manifested in the flesh, and then went back up to heaven. Okay, but that's your own frequency. If you heard about Kundalini, it's like, if your Kundalini was just sleeping at the bottom of your spine, then one day it wakes up and it goes, and it goes up into your crown and it starts to access all the higher information. But then it's kind of hard to relate to people. It's like you can't necessarily explain certain things to people. It's like all this, they'd be like, all is oneness. That sounds good. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, but it sounds good. Yeah, all is oneness. Or they'll be like, no, all can't be oneness. Yeah, that's blasphemous. What about God and Jesus? And he's the only son of God and all like this. And you don't know what kind of response you'll get because people are polarized, because they've chosen that route so many times that they don't know which way is up or down. They're confused because there is no up or down. They've decided what up and down is. But it's like, to the soul who has both the poles, it could just go like this, just change its perspective. It does. So the up and down is completely relative to how it's looking at it. But to something that's fixed, that's not moving, dead, they look at something and they judge it and they say, well, that's bad. But it's only bad to you based on how you're looking at it. So you're not actually the soul. And that's the difference between the spirit and the soul, because the spirit has an agenda. And if the soul has an agenda, which really the soul is just, the agenda of the soul is just to be itself. That's why come back to self, all like this is getting cliche at this point. You got a whole lot of spirits talking about come back to self. And because it resonates in the most, on the deepest level, they think because they said that it's all yourself, but then they slip in that other thing like, but follow me. So, that's up to you. You can learn a lot from a spirit, because the spirit does have a lot of energy. It can have a lot of current. But it has an agenda. And you might be okay with that agenda for 1,000,000 years. But what happens when you get tired of that agenda? What happens when you get tired of being a righteous angel that has to go fight demons? What happens when you're just like, shit is played out? It's just played out. It's at some point it has to get played out. Like, man, like I've been in like 1,000,000 wars. Like, I see how it ends. Sometimes I lose, sometimes I win. Maybe I always win. It was good, it was fun. You know, I got certain, you know, I earned my galactic medals and all like this, and it's been real great, but where do I go from here? It's like, what happens now? It's like, I'm the greatest general there ever was. Now what? Now you start looking at the king like, well, why is the king, you be like, why does the king keep on getting us in this wars? I feel like I could be a better king. I mean, I feel like I would make, you know, balance things out, because he's clearly thinking that his way is the only way. But only a polarized being would say something like that. The soul wouldn't say my way is the only way. The soul would say my way is my way. That's it. My way is my way. And then if you want to come and do business with me, then we can maybe come to terms. But I definitely don't need you to come to terms with me. I'm not going to force you into terms with me, because I don't care that much. It's like, I see everything for what it is. So it doesn't really matter. Only the person who has some type of agenda or an invested interest in your submission would try to manipulate you into a certain path or role. And if you give into that, it's because at some level it resonates with you and it's true for you. And I'm not saying that it's wrong. I'm just saying that it's not the soul. It is the soul, because the spirit is an aspect of the soul, but it's not balanced. That's the difference between a soul and a spirit. It's like, you can grow this big like balloon over on one side and just have, it's like, you can grow up and like, it's like, okay, you got two balloons that are connected together and you got the positive and the negative, masculine. The idea is to fill them simultaneously together. Okay. But what happens if every time you blow into the masculine one, you just like the way it tastes better? You're like, I like sweet more than bitter. You know, it's like, I like the candy, but I don't like the herb. You know what I'm saying? I like the candy. It's not good for me. It's like, but it's like it's like the bitter herb might heal you, but you wouldn't necessarily need to be healed if you weren't out here doing the sweet. So the sweet has its place, and the herb has its place. But if you keep fucking with the sweet, you start to grow this spirit over here. And the spirit just wants to survive. It's the same thing with all the laws of nature. It just wants to survive. But it can't survive by itself because it can't create its own energy. So it either has to A, humble itself before its other half, come to terms with itself, cease the war that it's having itself, create the balance, dance together as equal partners with itself, or try to manipulate energy out of the other side. Like, look how big and powerful I am, other side of myself, you puny human that exists on the other side of me. Come follow me, and maybe, you know, eventually you can never be like me. I'm the only God. You can't, you know what I'm saying? That's when you get into all that. I'm the only God, so don't ever think you'll be as good as me, but if you follow me, then you'll be better. You know, because I keep sucking everything from you. I got to give you something. But it's like, because they're trying to spin faster too. But if they don't give you any leeway to go the other way, because they're like, woo. It's like, here's the center point, and then you have an elliptical orbit. So they only want to give you this much of your own orbit, and then they want to go all the way around here. But then they only want to give you this much because they want more time. They want more time on their side. So, but the idea is to create the balance like this, and then once you're balanced, then because you can't spiral up like this, because. And then you just crash. It's like a plane that goes in like a spin, like it can't do it. So it has to be like this. That's the only way to spiral up, is to balance. So for the people, okay. Just because something is higher than your perspective right now doesn't make it balanced. So if you're looking at something or some type of knowledge or some type of teacher or some type of whatever, and they're giving you information that you didn't know before, take it, use it, make it your own. Create a thrust and spin out of that information, but don't think that they're going to exist on your next level, because you don't just, unless you want to, you can stop and be like, oh, I found my God, and it's still outside myself. I can say that it lives in me, but this little guy over here told me that, you know, blah blah blah, that I need to submit and obey, and here's the laws. But the only law of the universe, the only one, is balance. That's it. If you can look at balance, there's nothing else that you can say exists everywhere except for balance. So the Most High the supreme being is simply the awareness of balance. Because only in a balanced perspective can you expand into everything. Because if you, again, hopefully within my little things, I put that out there. Okay, last little thing, perhaps. Okay, since the soul is invincible and has that shell that cannot be penetrated, it has to, again, be seduced to come out of its shell. Once it comes out of its shell, then, niggas can start picking at it, right? But, so it has to be balanced in how it brings itself out of its shell, or expand its shell, like that. Okay, so, but it's like, okay, so you'll have like these spirits, or these entities, and this is what it kind of looks like from, I guess you can say, like in the spiritual world, you could say it kind of looks like a tentacle or like a tube. It's like someone plugged something into you. It's like they want to do business with you, but you could say it's like Wi-Fi, whatever. But at some level, there's an actual cord, right? It could be like a etheric cord, or it's just something like that, Okay, makes sense. All right. So it plugs into you, but it's like there's a shield. It's like there's no slot. There's no slot for what it's trying to plug in. It's like, I don't know why it's cutting out. I hope I can put these all together. Okay, so it's trying to plug into you, but if you have that shield, which is like your shell, because you're inside. The reason why, because a shell can also be like a prison. It's like if nothing can get in, then nothing can get out. So only the one who can create their own energy can say that they're invincible. Because if they can't create their own energy, they have to go outside themselves to get something they don't have. And once they go outside, it's always a two-way street. If you're trying to receive, you got to give. So if you're trying to go out and get something from somebody, best believe someone's taking something from you. And sometimes you can say that's sharing, or you can say that's, it can be the other side. It can be something that's very benevolent or something that's very malevolent, depending on, what your knowledge of self is. Okay, so it's like someone's coming to knock on the door, right? So knock, 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 knock. Okay, so they're trying to like plug something into you. They're trying to divert your attention. You could say they're advertising, they're adverting so they're adverting you, right? Because they're advertising. So they're trying to, there's people on the outside of your shell that are holding up signs like, hey, come do business with me. Like maybe they set up a fruit stand or something. They're like, hey, come, I have it. And some of these merchants, they might be good. They might like just be trying to get by, feed their family, same as everybody else. Maybe they're still polarized, so they haven't been able to create their own energy, but they're on their way. And as a soul, you're like, oh, well, I see myself in that person, so I want nothing more than to go help them, because why not? It's like, what purpose do I have? As a soul, what purpose do you have other than to help others if you already have everything? It's like once you realize that it's all a game and that you have everything that you need, the most rewarding experience then is to show others that they have everything that they need. And that is the unconditional love. That is the supreme. So, that's what it is. So when they try to plug something into you, it's always, you can't, it's like if you try to plug a power cord in, but you don't plug in a grounding cord, or if you plug in a big old power cord, but a little grounding cord, you'll short circuit and you'll fry whatever it is, the circuit that you're trying to make. So they have to be equal. So, or they don't have to be equal, but it'll create some resistance or some tension, or, it won't be balanced. So you have to pay attention to what energy you're giving based on what energy you're receiving. If you're trying to govern yourself, if you're trying to be your own kingdom, that's really what sovereignty is. It's not anything to do with none of the papers, and nothing to do with nothing. It's just something that's inside yourself. It's a self-knowledge thing, simply. That's what it is, because you see who you really are, and it doesn't really matter what happens to this whole world, because you have an awareness of your aspects of yourself that exist beyond this world. So that's going up and down. This is what the real messiahs, or the real Buddhas, or the real, ones that you hear about, that's what they actually do, okay? These go up and then come back down. They have the ability to go up and down. So you can see what happens here with some of the spiritual teachers. This is what happens. So here's the lowest level. This is where a lot of people are on, okay? They got like half a chakra, like a half a chakra that's activated. Okay, and then you get someone who gets to like 4 chakras activated. So they're technically your superior. They're your elder, but maybe you have a lot of potential, and you're just like, oh shoot. But then because they can't get any higher, they start telling you you can't either. Because whatever they're giving to you is making them heavy. So they're struggling to stay right here. They're struggling just like, okay. So what you got to do is you got to see what they're doing and just go up. And then you can, and then like this. And you look at them and then they're just kind of like, then they're looking, whenever anyone says anything, okay, not Evan, whenever you say anything, recognize you're always speaking about yourself to yourself. So if someone says something along the lines of, if you're always just, maybe you'll take my meaning, maybe you won't. I don't feel like that necessarily needs an example. You're always speaking to yourself. So when you're talking about, man, I can't believe all these ignorant people out here. You know what I'm saying? Like, why don't they just realize that this and this and that? What you just said was, why am I so ignorant? Why don't I just realize things? Because when you're projecting that onto other people, you're saying, well, why are you so, like, why don't you know this? Or why don't you see, nigga, why don't you see this? You're telling yourself that there's something you don't see. And maybe the thing that you need to see is that you don't know because you think you know. Because as soon as you say you know, well, then you don't. And that's the paradox. Because knowing is a real-time thing. It's a connection-based thing. It's not something that what's true yesterday won't necessarily be true tomorrow. So when people keep coming with the same things, it can be true that day. And you can learn from it that day. So if you spend a year under the mentorship of a certain teacher, but they have limits to their knowledge. Don't think that they're unlimited. They have limits to their knowledge too. And if they're not actively seeking themselves every day, constantly humbling themselves before themselves every day, then they're going to be stuck at a certain place. And if you follow them, you're going to be stuck at a certain place and it's going to be below them. So eventually at some point you got to cut the cord and be like, okay, that's what's up. Thank you very much. I respect you for everything that you did. I have no hard feelings about the energy that we exchanged because I see its purpose and all like this, but I'm simply done. It's time to move on to the next one. But that takes some confidence in yourself. That takes some responsibility. If you want the power, you got to take the responsibility. Because now this knowledge, you can't just... Power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. That's why you see a lot of people, once they get some so-called spiritual knowledge or whatever, they start to project what they think they know onto others as if their way is the only way. As if their way is the way. But it's not the way. Every way is the way. It can't be anything else because everything is one thing. So it's the same thing as like these people would be like, like these new age people, blah, blah, blah. These new age people are always like this, or these new age people are always like love and all like this. So now you polarize the new age people or the new age way of thinking into something negative to you because you've taken a position. But just put new age where it belongs. Within good and bad, that there's good things from it and bad things from it. So whoever was talking about fuck the new age people, they got something wrong with them too. In the Bible, it talks about how King Solomon, when he was building his own temple, which you could say is like your temple, Solomon, you can play with the words, but Solomon, like Solomon, Soul Man, he used demons to build his temple. So why are people so against the demons? You just don't know who they are. It's just that you're ignorant. You're ignorant. That's why you hate them, because you hate yourself, because you don't know yourself. That's why. So the demons are spirits. They are polarized aspects of soul. So it's like they're a soul, but they're like a ray. They're like a ray. It's like if you got a sun, and obviously you can say the sun is, but from respect, you can only see one part of the sun no matter what you're looking, because you're looking from one side or the other. So right here's the sun and there's the night. So night and day, right? But when you're looking in the mirror, you can see both sides. You see, so this is how this works. When you're looking at this, when you're looking into the mirror, you can see so you can see night and day at once when you're looking at yourself. So only when you realize everything is self, that's when you can see both poles at once. But when you think that this is right and this is wrong because this is light and this is dark and this is day and this is night, then you're only at best half of yourself. So, yeah. I mean, I feel like I could really talk about this for a really long time because I think this is one of those things that, you know, I see most people. Cause it's really everything. It's like polarization. That's what everything is. One side or the other. And anything that's trying to get you to be like us against them, you know what I'm saying? That's a game. Play the game if you want to, but be the player of the game. Don't be played by the game. Don't be a player. Just know what you're doing. That's it. It's like when you go out and you buy somebody else's game, you go and you buy Call of Duty and you put it in their little box and you play it on the screen. You don't necessarily think you're the one playing the game. It can kind of help you be better at the game if you kind of really get into it, but there's still an awareness that it doesn't really matter what happens in the game because you can turn that shit off and go do whatever you want. It's the same thing with this whole world. It's the same thing with the whole world. So if you're playing Sims, you're playing Sims, and then you start talking to someone in the Sim world, and they start telling you that, and you've been in the Sim world for so, like in a virtual reality game for so long, you're just like, you have no awareness of your other self. You're just like, then they tell you, hey, because something about you know that this ain't really what it is. So you're gonna always have entities, spirits with an agenda that are out here trying to tell you something that's half true. They always give you half truths because they always got to give you some truth to bait you in. So they can't just tell you all lies. So you think that because they give you a little bit of truth that everything they say is true, but it's never that way. It's never that way. So yeah, so you might get somebody in a little Sim where they're like, oh yeah, have you heard about my God? Yeah, my God, he's the God of everything. You should really come check him out, man. Like, blah, blah. He only wants to give you like 10% plus offerings and, come to church on Mondays or Sundays or, whatever and read this book and, yeah. And then if you do this, then whenever this ends, then you'll go to where he is. That sounds like a good deal. That's a good deal. I like that. I got it only once a week. I'm there. That's what's up. Cool. Forever. You said eternity? Oh, yeah, that's easy. That's what's up. And then you go with that for a while. You be dealing with that frequency for a while. And then at some point, because you're growing, you realize that don't really make a whole lot of sense. And the whole oneness thing, if everything is right now, then why am I waiting until later to do this? Why am I waiting until I'm die to go to heaven? And then what happens when I die? What was happening before I got here? Why wasn't I already in heaven? Oh, well, someone told me that I came here just to do this and this and that. Oh, okay. But I'm still not there. Okay. So they sent me to hell to do something from heaven, but what? It's like, but I need you to come here and confirm this for me. Oh, but you can't talk to him because you can't talk to him in this human vessel. Only certain people, prophets and things like that. Only they can do that. So you need to listen to these prophets over here. Oh, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, okay, because not everybody. Okay, not everybody could talk to the Creator. That makes sense. But that's not true. Only a polarized being can't talk to the Creator, because it can't see the Creator. Because the Creator is everything, not something. So if you don't have a connection with everything, you don't have a connection to yourself. You don't have a connection with the Creator. You have a connection. You have a connection with what you choose, and that could be good for you. But then that means that there's something that's opposite to you that you don't have a connection to, that now you've set up as something against you. And that's good, because you need something against you to get you back to the oneness. Yeah, so here's the last thing. Last thing. Okay. When you're dealing with the so-called spirits, okay. There's this, like I said, souls can use fear, okay? fear is an aspect of the soul, but it's not the soul. If you're being manipulated by fear, that's because you're not coming from the soul. But there's a lot of things out here that aren't coming from the soul. So the soul can use these type of frequencies to create, to move, to do, you could say. I'm not saying if I should even say this really, but okay. You know, like with the mosquito, like a mosquito's a parasite, right? A mosquito comes and lands on your arm, right? But you ever hear like if it kind of like flex and kind of give them too much, it'll explode? You can do the same thing with the energy with these things out here, right? With these so-called energies, right? You can do the same thing. You can do one or the other. My suggestion is that you implode them, not explode them. So you don't want to just keep giving them energy because you don't know how much they can take. They might take a lot of energy. It's like they might be a real flexible balloon. They could be like, oh, he's just giving me a whole bunch of energy, thanks. And eventually they'll explode because they can't take it. But if for efficiency's sake, when they make the here's the thing. When they make the connection with you, they're also agreeing. They're also agreeing when they make the connection with you because it's always a two-way street. It's just that they seduce you into giving more energy to them than they give to you. So to get them to leave you alone, all you got to do is take more from them than they give to you. And see, I really shouldn't say this. I really shouldn't say this. Now that came out completely crazy what I just said. But see, this is the thing when you try to give, adult information to children. I don't want to say it like that, but you tell a child that he can do certain things, then he goes and do that, but he don't have no discernment, then he starts fucking himself up. Because you don't want to do it. This is just a skill to build, and then they just will leave you alone. Because they know that if it's like nobody goes and messes with a bear. It's like nobody goes up and like tries to poke a bear with a stick. It just never happens. So the bear doesn't go around attacking people because it can. Because it can, nobody messes with it. That's what I'm trying to say. Because you have this potential, once you realize this potential, then they'll leave you alone because they realize that once they make that connection with you, that if you get onto them, they'll probably cease to exist. Because that's the thing. It's like going into the sun. You're going to disintegrate. And then you just go into the cosmos. It's like, maybe I should just keep it there. Because, yeah, maybe, I don't know. When I first started making videos, I was trying to like watch what I say or whatever. And obviously things change so quickly. All the things I was saying in my old videos even those were coming through a filter. So as time goes on, I've just been taking filters back. Or like polishing what I see, Because instead of seeing what I want to see, I'm seeing what's there, you could say. Because I'm getting rid of preferences and bias and judgment about things. And once you do that, you just naturally expand because you're not constantly falling over. Every time you try to build your energy up, you start be like, what about that? And then it's like, so yeah. So there's a lot about everything. But I think this has been a long video, so I'm probably just gonna keep it right there. That's what's up. Hope it made sense. I'll watch it and then, I say maybe I'll make another part, but then I normally don't. But this is like a topic that I think, could shed some light on things. But okay, that'll be it. Hopefully I can put all these together. Yeah.